And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed. To you it shall be for food. Genesis 1:29. Man did eat angels' food. He sent them meat to the full. Psalm 78:25. Everyday Manna with Lisa.
Hi everybody, and welcome to Everyday Manna. Today we are going to make a delicious, quick and easy meal. We are going to make orange glazed pork chops. To go alongside that, we're going to make some homemade potato cakes and a green bean casserole. So we're going to get started on our pork chops. Now I'm going to bake these, but I'm going to lightly brown them on the stove. So I'm going to take just a little bit of salt, just a little bit, not a lot. Maybe half a teaspoon for all of these pork chops. And I've got 6 pork chops that I have trimmed very well. And then we're going to add some pepper. These are center cut loin chops that are naturally very, very lean and quick cooking. If your pork chops tend to be tough and dry, then your problem is you're overcooking them, because they are just naturally a lean product. So I've got my skillet and it's good and hot. So I'm going to put these chops in there and I'm just going to lightly brown them. I'm not cooking them through because I'm going to cook them in the oven. We're going to bake them. I'm going to brown them on both sides because that browning is flavor. Don't skip this step. Either put them under the broiler and brown them in the oven if you don't want to do it on a skillet or in a skillet, or do them like I'm doing them. And I'm going to lightly do the other side with salt again, probably about 1/4 of a teaspoon this time on the chops. Let's put this in the dishwater or dish sink to be washed. While those are browning, let's get our sauce ready. Now I have got 2 of the little mini cups of mandarin oranges, and I drained them through a strainer, and I just reserved the juice, and I added about 3 tablespoons of butter to that. Then I'm going to put about, I don't know, a tablespoon or so. I like the coarse grained Dijon mustard, but you use whatever kind of mustard that you like. And then some brown sugar, about 1/3 of a cup of brown sugar, and you can use the Splenda brown sugar, which is what I'm using here because that's what I like. The sucrose blend. Just stir that up and set it aside. You know, use your fork or whisk to kind of break up those clumps. And this is going to be our glaze that we're going to bake them in. Won't take but just a second because my skillet was hot. Let's let them go just a minute more. Now you will need to have a good sized baking dish that you can put the chops in and pour the glaze over. Or if you want to, you could use an oven-proof skillet. Now this particular one is not oven-proof unless I were to wrap the handle in foil, but I'm just going to transfer it. But you can do it in a one pan if you use an oven-proof skillet. Just lightly brown them. Hang on just a second. And we're going to put just a tiny bit of olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, maybe a teaspoon, in the bottom of our pan. And just spread that around with a paper towel. This is just to prevent anything from sticking, because we do have a brown sugar here and that's going to caramelize. So you want to make it easy. You could, again, if you wanted to line it, you could line it with some nonstick foil. I'm going to turn these over. You see that brown on there? That's flavor. That's why you really don't want to skip this step. It really does make a difference. Now I have trimmed these already, but if your pork chops need to be trimmed, trim them, and if you find on the outer lip of the pork chop that little thin silver skin, either trim that completely off or put a slit through it, because if you don't do that, what's going to happen when you put the heat on the pork chops? They're going to curl up. If you find your pork chops or steaks or whatever you're cooking tend to curl up in a little bowl shape like that, what has happened is that silver skin is constricting because it cannot break, it cannot dissolve, so you need to trim through that if you have that on your chops. These don't. I've already trimmed that off. I've showed you how to do that before. Now, we're going to take, it's okay if the one side is not totally browned up. You've got the one side there. Now, these are not cooked through, but we're going to put them in our baking dish. Don't realize how loud that is till it stops. Then we're going to mix up our glaze again just lightly, and then pour this evenly over the pork chops. And we're going to put them in the oven and let them gently bake in the oven. And the even heat, the gentle heat hitting it from all sides, are going to cook these through gently, and it really will make them so good and so tender. Now, take your reserved mandarin oranges and just scatter them over it and put it in the oven at 375 degrees or 350 degrees, excuse me, for about 30 minutes, and they'll be done. We're just going to let those gently bake, and they will be wonderful. And if you wanted to, you could brown your chops and then put all of it in a crock pot, and then, you know, put it on low and let it cook the same way that we did that, but just put it on low and let it cook all day long while you're gone. And then when you get home, you've got dinner done. And it really is easy to do that. So, I'll tell you what, I'm going to just clean this up, and when I come back, we are going to start on a classic recipe, a green bean casserole, to get that in the oven, and then we're going to make some homemade potato cakes. I'll be back in just a minute. All righty, welcome back. Now our wonderful little orange glazed pork chops are baking away in the oven, and we are going to make a classic dish that a lot of people do around the holidays. But it really is easy and quick, and something that you can make for your, for any night of the week. It doesn't take that long. I'm going to make a green bean casserole. Now in this bowl, I have 2 cans. And I like the French cut green beans for this, and I have drained them. And I like the no salt added or the no sodium added canned green beans. And I'm going to add 1 can of sliced water chestnuts that I'm going to run a knife through, because I don't want these big chunks in the green bean casserole. So I'm just going to kind of take my knife and chop them up just a little bit. This is a really easy dish that looks fancy and tastes fancy, but it's so simple. It really is so easy. I just want those bite-sized. Make sure I got them all bite-sized. Let me get my little mover out here. I'm going to add those to the green beans. You could use frozen green beans if you want. I personally don't care for the frozen green beans as much. You could use fresh if you wanted, but make sure that you cook them, like the snap beans. Go ahead and cook them for like 6 minutes and then drain them. If you wanted to use fresh, you could. I've got about a tablespoon of butter that I have melted, and I'm going to add a little bit of fresh ground pepper. I'm not going to add any salt to this dish because the topping has some sodium in it, and the cream soup has some. Now I like the cream of celery soup in this dish. You could use cream of mushroom or cream of chicken. You could use any of those flavors that you like. You could even use the cheese one, like the cheddar cheese condensed soup. That would be good too. But I'm using the cream of celery because I love celery. Then we're just going to stir this all up, all together. If you wanted to add some little pimento, you know, the little diced pimentos, that would be pretty in here. Or some sauteed red pepper would be pretty in here, would be good. You really could do this. This is just a basic starting point, and you can make it your own from here. Now put that in the bottom of a a baking dish, and then smooth it out. And one of my newfound favorite ingredients to use in the kitchen are these little French fried onions that you buy. I find them where the canned vegetables are. Why they're there, I don't know, because most people use them as a topping. I would think they would be in the baking section, but they're not. They're with the canned vegetables, and it's just the canned French fried onions, and I like to crunch them up. I'm telling you, these have become, I really had never used them until about 6 months ago on a regular basis. And then I was recipe testing, and I did a chicken dish coated with this. I think we've made it together before, with some panko breadcrumbs and some rosemary, and coated boneless, skinless chicken with them, and then just baked it in the oven, and it was so good. My boys went crazy over it. And so I'm like, And then you just take that and sprinkle it over top. Could not be simpler. But it's good, and everybody likes these. If you did not want to use the canned French fried onions, you could take shallots or small onions and slice them very, very thin, and then put them, fry them, and then drain them till they're golden brown, and then drain them and use them if you wanted to. They aren't quite as crunchy, but they're still very, very good. Now we're just going to put these in the oven alongside our pork chops and let that bake right there with our pork chops. And it's easy, it's quick, it's simple. I'm going to clean up my mess, and when I come back, we are going to make a homemade potato cake. We'll be back in just a minute. Alrighty, now we are back, and we are going to make a homemade potato cake. Some people call these latkes, and I guess technically they are latkes, but we are going to make just homemade potato cakes. You can use either fresh potatoes and shred them, or you can use the frozen shredded potatoes. Just make sure they're thawed. Now I'm going to use the food processor for this because I don't want to hand shred all those potatoes. But I'm going to first start on an onion. Now you will need a skillet, and I've got a larger skillet over here, and I've got about, I don't know, maybe ½ an inch of, I'm just using vegetable oil, heating up. You could use canola oil if you wanted. I wouldn't use olive oil for this recipe because that would just be cost prohibitive, and you really don't want the flavor of the oil. So just use a neutral oil. Now I'm going to shred my onion too. I've got one medium-sized onion, and bear with me here. Now I'm using my food processor with a shredding blade. This is so easy to get your onion done this way instead of chopping it by hand. Now I went ahead and peeled my potatoes, and I've just been letting them soak in cold water to keep them from turning brown. And I'm just going to cut them in half so they fit in the feed tube. And I'm just going to feed these through the feeding tube of my food processor. The ones that'll fit whole, I don't bother cutting in half. And let's do one more and then we'll see where we are. Now, let's see where we are on the amount of potato that I have. You will always have a few little pieces at the top of your food processor that just don't get through the food tube. So do be careful of that. Now, I have some potatoes shredded and some onion shredded. I'm just going to empty out the bowl of my food processor. I think I'm going to do one more potato. I love my food processor and I use it. Oh, let me point something out real quick. On your shredding blade, you will have big holes aiming one way and little holes poked up the other way. It depends on the grate that you want. If you want a finer grate, make sure you got the smaller holes, but I want a bigger grate, so I'm going to go with the larger ones. But I don't know if you knew that or not, but there are two different size gratings on the blades of most food processors. Let's do one more potato. And that's it. My oil is heating up. Let's add that to it. Now, I am going to take a clean towel. Let me show you what I'm going to do here. And I'm going to put this mixture in my clean towel and squeeze out the liquid because I want to get out as much of the liquid as I can. You see it's already dripping out. You want to remove as much of the liquid as you can. If you're using frozen potatoes, make sure that you do this very same tip with the thawed potatoes. You see how much liquid's in there? Well, your latkes or your potato cakes would not hold together if you didn't squeeze all this out. So you want to get as much as you can and then just discard that. Or you could save it for a vegetable stock. It would actually be very good with that onion flavoring in there. Now that's a lot better, and then just clean that in the washing machine. And that's an easy way to get the liquid out of your potatoes. You can do the same thing with spinach to get the frozen thawed spinach. Now, get my workspace here done. Now I've got all of these potatoes and onions together. I just want to stir that up to get the onion distributed between the potatoes. And we're going to add 2 eggs that I have lightly beaten, some salt and some pepper, and some flour, about half a cup of just all-purpose flour. Stir that together. Your egg will act as your binder to hold it together. Now, it is critically important that your oil be hot before you add your mounds of potatoes. These are so good and so very addictive to eat. I mean, they really are good. And you can do this you could add, if you wanted to add in any other spices, now would be your time. You could add in some rosemary or some thyme or garlic, minced up garlic. You could do that, or garlic powder. This is the time to do that. Let me show you again a quick way to tell if your oil is hot. Take a wooden spoon, put it down in the middle, and if it bubbles up around it, then you'll know that your oil is, coming up to temperature. You see how we've got slight bubbles there? Or you can simply take one little shred of your potato and see. See, that's not quite hot enough. You see how slow that was? into coming up to temperature. We want it just a little bit hotter. If you want to use a deep fryer, you can set your temperature to like 375. Just give it about another minute, maybe, and that will be done. Now our green bean casserole is done and our pork chops are done. This is the side dish, no matter what you're serving it with, that you want to do last, and you want to do it just right before serving. And go ahead and get a paper towel lined something. Put paper towels and a draining rack of some sort on there, because when these come out of the oil, we want to make sure that we have it ready to go on a baking sheet to, so that they can drain. Now, I like to kind of pat mine into like a little mound and then get it in the oil. Be very careful with your fingers. If you feel uncomfortable doing that, then use your spoon. I guess I've been cooking so long, I'm not at all uncomfortable because I know to watch my fingers. But if you're, certainly use a spoon. And do not let your children do this part. This is not something I would let little kids do. Leave them alone until they brown on that one side and then turn them over. Because if you start messing with them, they're going to fall apart. So we're going to just put another one. And don't overcrowd your skillet. Make sure that you leave room for the potato cakes to fry. If you overcrowd, what's going to happen is they're going to steam and not fry. So I would say about 5 is all I would put in here at a time. Try to make them the same size if you can. And you'll have some little strings, coming out. That's okay. Let's do one more. They need to fry, I'd say 3 to 5 minutes per side is plenty. So we'll just let them fry until they're golden brown. Alrighty, now I've got a couple of them done here. I just want to show you. I've added a few more in here. Once you let that one side set, then you can flip them over, because the egg and the flour acts as a binder. See, you can do that, and then you can just turn them over, and the egg and the flour bind it together. But it's very important that you leave them alone for a few minutes and that you let that excess water squeeze it out. Now, here are a couple that are done. So I just put them on my lined baking dish and serve them while they're hot. You can sprinkle them with just a touch of salt if you want to. If you have a coarse salt, it's really good over top of them. And there you go. Here are our wonderful pork chops that are done. And you just want to serve it with some of the juice that's in the bottom of your pan, along with some of the oranges, our wonderful little potato cakes or latkes, and our delicious green bean casserole with water chestnuts. And again, I use the cream of celery soup because that's what I like. But you can use any kind of cream of soup that you enjoy. These are quick and easy, start to finish. You could have this done in under an hour, totally, 45 minutes, and you've got dinner on the table, especially if you put those pork chops in the crock pot in the morning and, whip together that casserole and these potatoes. You could have it done in 30 minutes. So it's a very easy, quick, elegant meal, good enough for company, best of all for you or your family at home. Thank you for joining with me, and I will see you next time on Everyday Manna.
Thank you for watching Everyday Manna with Lisa. This program is made possible by viewers like you. Your support is continually needed to keep Christian programming on the air. Please send your best financial gift to Living Faith Television in care of Everyday Manna, P.O. Box 1867, Abingdon, Virginia 24212.